Hello and welcome to Property Question Time. I'm Stephen Galpin and this is the programme where you can have all of your property related questions answered by our team of experts. With me today are Hayley Andrews, property investor, mentor and CEO of Your Freedom Empire. Hi.
Hi, nice to see you again.
Good to have you back again. And on your right is John Howard, property developer, author, public speaker, lots of other things too. Welcome, John.
A jack of all trades.
Well, I suppose so. I was trying to be polite. Really.
Good to be back.
Okay, good trip in from Ipswich.
It's only an hour, you know that.
Ipswich by the sea.
Ipswich near London.
Right, okay. All right, well, welcome to you both. And Hayley, we're going to get straight on with your first question, which is, do the panel think that lifetime mortgages, which are set for a much longer period than the usual 25 years, and that can be passed down to family members, would help the difficulties for young people faced with high repayments and prohibitive deposits when they're buying these days?
There's positives and negatives around lifetime mortgages. The positive thing is, of course, you can release the equity from the property. These types of mortgages are very restrictive. So you have to qualify, be of a certain age, the property has to be of a certain value. The loan to values are quite low and the interest is quite high as well. But you can take out insurance and products that actually cover you if there's any shortfall when that loan needs to be repaid. My understanding of lifetime mortgages is they can't be passed down to generations. So the money that you release from your property, you can spend that however you choose, which obviously is a great positive because it can help your children get onto the property ladder, start a new business, buy a Ferrari, so there's that positive. It's also wealth planning as well.
Yeah.
What, the Ferrari, yes. So a red one.
Yeah, of course.
Cool. What other colour would there's only one colour, isn't there, that Steve would have? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So there are positives around it, and of course from wealth planning as well, from inheritance tax and things like that. Of course, it can be beneficial to go down that route. What you will normally find is people that actually go for a lifetime mortgage is those that don't qualify for a further advance or a remortgage.
Do you think there are enough products on the market at the moment?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, that industry, that marketplace has grown massively over the last 5 years. You've got something like over 500 products available, each with their own bells and whistles and different.
Amazing,
there's a lot out there. And we're talking about first-time buyers here. I mean, we've spoken about this on other shows before. There's lots. There's a lot of incentive for first-time buyers at this moment in time.
Huge amount of incentives.
I think my sort of favourite question and subject is: do you think it's right that the government steps in with taxpayers' money to assist first-time buyers and that sort of thing, or do you think it should be left to the market?
I didn't have that help, but of course it's a great positive for people that are out there looking to get onto the property ladder. I think any help would be very much appreciated, and of course from a developer's point of view as well, there's lots of help there.
I know
huge amount of help.
Should one taxpayer help another to get an advantage?
Help thy neighbour?
Well, I suppose so. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's not for me to decide really, but it's there. There's a lot of help out. If you are a first-time buyer, there's more help now than there ever has been, in my opinion.
I agree. When people say, every generation says, it was easier for the last generation to get on the housing ladder. The truth is, this generation have never had it so good. Whatever they say. They've got mortgages at interest rates at virtually nothing, literally nothing. They've got 95% mortgages guaranteed by the government. They've got help to buy guaranteed by the government. Goodness me, what more do they want? And if they say, well, I want to live around the corner from my mum and dad, but I can't afford to, well, no, you may not be able to afford to, but you can probably afford to live half an hour away. So, I've got no sympathy for them at all. And I know I've taken some stick on this show for saying that at times. But people must always appreciate that politics and property are entwined. And we've said it before, the reason the government have all these incentives on the housing ladder, to get people on the housing ladder, predominantly is because they know they will vote Conservative at the next election. If they own their own property, they're more likely to vote Conservative. And if they don't, if they're in rental or social housing, they're more likely to vote Labour. And that's a fact.
Is that why we've had 12 housing ministers in 10 years then?
Well, when you consider that in the last conference 2 years ago, the Conservative conference I was at, that the big push for those 3 days was housing. It's a bit of a joke to think that it's such an so important to the country, but especially the Conservative government, and they realise there's a shortfall and all the rest of it, that actually it's amazing they've had so many housing ministers, because it's considered right up there from a ministerial point of view. Yet they haven't delivered.
But from a historic point of view, it looks like it's one of those jobs that you either get on your way up or on your way down.
Well, it shouldn't be, and I'm amazed they've had so much turmoil in that department. It amazes me. It really genuinely does amaze me, because it is such an important thing. You know, and going back to the lifetime mortgages, of course, in Europe, you know, these get passed on to generation to generation, and the longer your mortgage, you're paying so much money for it. So if it's a 35-year mortgage compared to a 20-year mortgage, you're paying so much more. My advice is, if you can reduce the length of your mortgage, do so, because you are saving thousands and thousands of pounds by doing so. Better than paying into a pension, probably, to be honest with you.
Well, just on that point, I mean, there's always been the comparison maybe between renting and having a mortgage, and which is cheaper, which is more efficient, or whatever. But of course, if we do start to get back the longer tenancies, i.e. 3-year periods or 5-year periods, that comparison is going to get closer, isn't it? There's going to be almost as much benefit in renting as there is perhaps in buying. Don't you think so?
No. Hayley, what do you think?
I think it's going to be down to the individual, really, and their aspirations of being a homeowner. I think less people now in the generation that are looking to get onto the ladder actually put so much emphasis, or, I mean, our generation was, you know...
I'm glad you're saying our generation, Hayley, because I wish I was your generation, by the way. Stephen definitely wishes he was.
I wish, yeah.
No, but it was, you know, we wanted to, you know, we wanted to get a good job then, and
really, wasn't it?
buy a house.
And there's still aspirational people around who want to do that, but I understand what you're saying.
But the strange thing is, we've come out of Europe, but developed a European attitude towards buying, haven't we?
Well, no, we haven't done it. No, I disagree entirely. The biggest thing is get a repayment mortgage, because you're then paying it down. If you have if you have interest only, it's like a rent. I agree with you. But if you had repayment, at least you're paying it down. It might take you a long time, but you're not wasting your money then.
Okay. Anything more, Hayley?
I kind of, I agree in some aspect, but I mean, if you're looking at leverage, and you know, it depends on what you're doing with the money that you're pulling out. If you're buying a Ferrari, then that's a bad decision.
I mean, there's good debt and bad debt.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. If you're putting that into obviously something that produces a very good return, then it may actually be worth you doing that.
I think it's very important to make that distinction between buying a property for a return and a profit, or whether it's your home.
I agree entirely. I think there's two types of investment there, without question.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll stick with a Ferrari, I think.
At your age, so would I.
Good, okay. Well, I've got an old age crisis.
You asked for that one.
I did. Okay, John, your question.
Yes.
When a developer is assessing the profit potential of his profit, does he look at the market prices in the geographical location of the project and work backwards from those prices to work out what he can afford to purchase the land for? Or does he simply take the land cost of building, add the appropriate profit margins, and work out what the development will sell for in that way? The latter could, I guess, be the riskier calculation.
Shall I tell you what I do?
Yes, you do.
And then Hayley can say, well, I don't do it like that. And you can say, well, I don't do that either. Okay, so what I do is this. I do a lot of conversions. So I'm going to start with a conversion because it's a little bit simpler to do. So what I want to know is, the first question I want to know is, what is the square footage or square meterage? Because once I know that, that's all I need. I can work everything else out from that one fact. So I can work out, when I know what the square footage is, I can work out what the building costs will cost me. I can work out what I'm going to sell for per square foot. I can work the whole lot out. So what I do, I take all costs, including interest, for the whole project, over the period of time, if it's a smaller project, say of 10 flats, say converting 10 flats, for example, I work that over a 2-year period. Because it's all right saying, well, I can, I have everyone, and with the joint ventures I'm doing now, people bring me deals every day and say, I can do this in 9 months. I say, well, you might be able to do it in 9 months, but I'm still working my figures out in 2 years, because it's all about selling that last flat or last house, not the first one, it's the last one. And you can always bet your bottom dollar, can't you, Hayley? There's always one or two that stick at the end. You sell them twice, you get fed up with the damn things. Eventually they sell and we get our profit. So I take all the costs, and on that, I want to make 30% net profit. On the money I'm investing, I want to make 30% net profit.
I suppose, time is the one thing most people make the mistake on, isn't it? They just don't calculate it in.
The two things are time and
Contingency.
and contingency, because Bill, how often have I come in 40 years on time and on budget? The only times I've come in on time and on budget is when I've done a bigger scheme and used what I would call proper contractors.
I thought you were going to say whenever I was advising you.
Well, when you advise me, Stephen, that as well. But what I'm saying is, it's so difficult for a small contractor, small builder, because they just haven't got the resources sometimes. And if something goes wrong, they've probably got 3 other jobs on the go. They're doing this, juggling. It's very, very difficult. I always allow 3 months extra to what the builders say, because then if I've got a joint venture partner, they're not disappointed. And I always allow an extra 3, so I allow 3 months for 2 reasons. One for my joint venture partner, if I've got one, and the other reason, 3 months for the bank.
Yeah. You always need that.
Keep them on side. Keep everyone on side.
You need that what-if contingency, don't you?
I only have a 5% contingency if it's new build, and I have a 10% if it's a conversion. I have 15% if it's a listed building. So if it's grade 2 listed, grade 2 star, I want 15%. And I under promise and over deliver.
Anything to add to that, Hayley?
I completely agree. Have I shocked you?
No, Hayley, I'm amazed. That's fantastic.
You've obviously read his book.
It's
giving you a free
It's
copy.
early days. It's early days.
All right, guys. Thank you very much for that. That's all we've got time for in this half of the show. Join me again after the break. Hello, and welcome back to part 2 of Property Question Time. I'm Stephen Galpin, and with me are Hayley Andrews and John Howard. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Hayley, your second question. I live in a rented house. I'm not a natural English speaker and want to receive TV programmes in my own language. However, my landlord has refused permission for me to have a satellite dish on the building. The house is located in a village, and so cable is not an option. Do I have any rights in terms of permission for a dish, or am I stuck with the landlord's decision?
So it's going to depend what's in the AST. The AST is likely to have a structural adjustment clause in there. So the first thing I would say is check the AST. Secondly, because if there is something in there, then the landlord is well within their rights to refuse. The AST should have been read and checked prior to signing, and it is a legal document. The second thing to check, really, I'm all about solutions, is find out why they're refusing. It may be that there are restrictions locally to
planning consent.
Planning consent. She said that she was in a village, it could be a conservation area or something like that. So it may actually be a legitimate reason that they are refusing. Or it could be down to the fact that they are worried about the property, the brickwork being damaged or the roof being damaged for the installation of a satellite dish. What I would say, or what I'd recommend the tenant doing, is reach out to the landlord to find out what the reason for refusal is. If it's the latter, and they don't want the satellite dish on the property, there's no planning restrictions or anything like that, of which they're well within their rights to say, perhaps suggest that it be a freestanding satellite dish and installed by a certified engineer. That would be a solution, and I think as a landlord, if someone came to me with that solution, then I may be more inclined to accept. They are quite ugly, these satellite dishes, and big.
There's two issues in London, and certainly here you would need planning consent for a dish, which a lot of people ignore. But I think in recent years, because of one or two tragedies that have happened, of course, a satellite dish is an electrical installation. You put it on a balcony in a high-rise block or something, and it's got no way of being isolated from the ground floor if there is a fire or something like that.
Yeah, I never thought of that.
Yeah.
It's a very difficult subject, because I think this applies to a number of issues with tenant-landlord relationships. I mean, I think we all know the government have tried to introduce, I can't remember what the expression is they use, a sort of ideal tenancy with ideal and consistent terms across the country. Yeah. Perhaps you can have pets, whereas that's not normally accepted. Idea. But hold on.
The model tenancy that was
the
brought
model
in January.
tenancy, yeah. But you see, the problem is there, you are denying a landlord the right to really at least control in some way what goes on in his property, because at the end of the day, quite frankly, it's him that's going to have to put things right if it goes wrong, if the tenant leaves and pets have left a mess, or construction has been undertaken illegally or unlawfully.
Can I speak now?
You can.
Thank you. So
you get paid more than I do, you see, that's why I'm just trying to cut the time down.
Thank you, yeah. So first of all, I'm delighted this lady obviously watches the show online, because she can't, obviously not watching it on
Why have
Sky,
we decided it's a lady? I don't know.
I think you said it was a lady.
No,
yeah, I think the question
I said I live in a rented house. I'm not an English speaker and want to receive...
I think it was a lady. Anyway, the second thing is, you know, the landlord surely has got the right to say whether they want a satellite dish up or not. And that the question should be is when, you know, the point is really that when you take a tenancy, ask the question.
Yeah.
Don't then go move in and go, well, I want this, I want that. We have it all the time, and it's very difficult. You know, at the end of the day,
it's a legal document, and it's there for a reason.
It's there for a reason.
But you see, even with the planning restriction, I know in London a lot of the argument is where perhaps get, for example, a Bangladesh family move into an apartment, they will say that it's against their human rights to be restricted in not being able to receive a satellite programme in their native language. And you know, I suppose
where's it stop?
Well,
Steve?
but where does it stop? I don't know.
But that's what the tenancy agreement is for. So if there are restrictions in there or a clause in there,
they're the rules.
Yeah, but they'll argue that with planning.
They're the rules, aren't they?
Yeah.
They're the rules. So I haven't got a lot of, you know, I'm sorry to hear. I'm delighted she watches the show online, but ultimately...
Well, she won't if she hasn't got a dish, will she? Perhaps we should take her cause up.
I mean, in short, really, if the landlord refuses and there's a clause in the tenancy agreement that states that she can't make any changes...
tough.
Yeah,
it's tough. It's no different to wanting a dog or a cat, you know, after the horse has bolted. At the end of the day, if you want that, organise that before you sign the tenancy agreement, not afterwards.
I can't count how many disputes they've had to adjudicate on, and I think I always say to people, look, you know, the landlord's written the lease, he obviously approved it, you're the tenant, you've signed it, so why don't you both just do what the lease says?
Hayley's got a lot more sympathy than I have, I think.
Well, I just think I'm just very solution-minded,
yes.
you know.
No, so am I. The solution is move out.
Yeah.
Or don't move it in the first place.
If the worry is that it's going to cause a problem, I mean, if there's planning restrictions or anything like that, then fair enough. You know, that she is refusing on grounds that, you know, she doesn't want to go through that process, or there's restrictions around that happening. But if it's, but also equally and as important, if she's worried, or he is worried about it, damaging their property, the brickwork or the roof, which it can, then there are other solutions that you can look at. And I suppose if they're a good tenant, you want to keep that tenant, I would much rather, you know,
well, I think
come up with a solution than...
Yes.
Yeah.
No, I understand.
I
that.
agree with both of you. I think, John, you're right to a great degree. You know, as a landlord, you need to
Do you
have
want to just
control.
repeat that? Because you don't often say that.
I don't
He
often
said, John,
say
you're
it.
right.
No, but you know,
Got it recorded now. As
You
well.
you must have some right and control over your own
course,
property.
yeah.
And Hayley's right. It's a very sensible
Yeah,
way to
sensible
approach things
attitude,
with
yeah, I agree.
how do we do it?
Yeah.
Sort of mentality. But
Yeah.
that's very good. All right, let's move on. John, your second question. I'm about to buy my first property. I'm naturally nervous and don't want to make any mistakes. Should I instruct a full survey of the property or simply rely on my lender's mortgage valuation / inspection?
Good question, and a question that I get lots of times. If you're buying a modern house or a block of flat, a flat in a house or a purpose-built flat, I would basically rely on the valuation. Remember, the valuation's not being done for you; it's being done for the mortgager, which is it? Lender. We'll call it the lender. That's simpler.
So she is very solution oriented.
She's solution orientated. Hayley's on it today. So basically, if there's anything serious wrong with the property, it will flash up and they won't lend you the money. If you're buying an older property that and perhaps you're putting a bigger deposit down than say 10-15%, then maybe have a survey. But I would have the valuation first. Still, make sure you can get the mortgage. Then have the building surveyor in just to pinpoint exactly what needs to be done if it's in poor condition.
Yes, I mean quite often a lender's surveyor will say they approve it for the purposes of the mortgage. However, you may wish to look at
absolutely
A, B, and C.
And that's the clue. If it comes back with a clean bill of health, you're pretty okay these days. I mean, you know, I wouldn't want you to waste £1,000, £1,500, £2,000 if it wasn't required. Now, I know some people are worried about crossing the road because it's dangerous. I understand that. But even so, you know, come on, let's be sensible.
I suppose the only caveat there, John, is that we're getting a lot more these days of what they call drive-by mortgage surveys,
I don't
aren't
seem
we?
so lucky to get any of those.
You know,
every development we do, the damn surveyor comes round and, you know, huffs and puffs and then goes away. I hear. I mean, do you have any, Hayley, that like that?
It's very popular here. I mean, I think of 2 or 3 firms that just do computer valuations now.
Well, I suppose if you're only buying 50-60%, that's fair enough. Why would you need to go, especially with the land registry information now? You know, why would they need to go? But some still do, or most still do, I think. But if it's 80-90%, then I think it's important they do. One of the reasons is they go because they need to make sure it actually exists and it's not mortgage fraud, of course, which is a bit of a joke when you think you've got land registry now, you've got this 2 sets of lawyers. You know, the lawyers these days, of course, are under huge pressure. Money laundering, all these other things. They're under massive pressure to prove that the person purchasing is genuine. And how many times you have to give your passport to a solicitor and a, you know, an electricity bill or something? It's ridiculous. Yet, do you know that in London last year, something like 25% of all property purchasers were involved in money laundering? Still. And the other city that was the most, apart from London, was Edinburgh. Amazing to think they make us go through everything to prove that it's, you know, it isn't money laundering. Yet 25% of the purchases in London were involved. It's amazing.
Okay, well on that note, I'm going to say thank you very much to you both for taking part in today's programme. Great answers, great help to our viewers, I'm sure. So from John Howard and Hayley Andrews, thank you very much for joining us. That's all we've got time for today, so join me again next time on Property Question Time.